Hello everybody, welcome. My name is Richard. I hope you're all well. This video is going to be about this Porsche Taycan 4S here, which has been my car for over a year now. You've seen it in a few videos over the course of that year. And it's one of very few cars that I've actually owned for over a year. In my lifetime of car ownership, I normally just keep a car for a short time and then move it on. And that's why I started this business of buying and selling cars. But this car is a bit of a love-hate relationship. There's quite a few things that are not so good about it. I'll explain them in this video. I'll be honest and transparent about that. And yet I struggle to let it go because it's also a fabulously brilliant car as well. So I'm very aware in this video, what I don't want to come across is a kind of sport brat of a Porsche Taycan. I know they're extremely expensive. I know I'm very privileged to be able to have one of these that I can use. You know, I still buy my pants in Primark, I still shop and buy budget clothes, my phone's years old and broken, but I still keep it going. But the Porsche Taycan is a lot of money, and I do appreciate it is. So, but what I want it to be is kind of not a sport brat kind of moaning about something that's really expensive. I know it's a privileged position to be in, so just bear that in mind through this video. But I'm going to start off by having a bit of a moan and a sook about why this car isn't very good. And then later on in the video, I explain that despite those flaws, it's still one of the best cars out there, one of the best EVs, and why I love it so much. I clearly do. There's not many cars that I would keep for over a year. Okay, so it's a white 4S underneath. It actually looked exactly like this car when it was new. I'm the second owner of this car, and actually I first got this car in to sell for somebody, but because of this distinctive wrap that the car has on it, a dirty martini wrap, harking back to the Le Mans 24-hour races where your car gets dirty and if you win it, you're not allowed to clean it and such like. It was so distinctive that I thought it'd be a great car to keep for all the summer events. We do a lot of events during the summer, and it's obviously very distinctive. It really stands out, and it's a bit of fun. The idea with this, I like to take it to events because it's a bit of fun, you know, and you know, especially if we do events where children are coming along to it, they always like it. And what I want to show is that electric cars don't just have to be slow, boring things you've got to charge up all the time. They can be high performance, desirable cars and appeal to petrol heads like myself as well. And for that, it's been brilliant. We have stickers on it as well as the wrap here promoting the company, and it gets spotted up and down motorways. And of course, at any event, it gets photographed rather a lot, whether it's in the event, like things like London to Brighton Electric Vehicle Rally, or just in the car park at things like the Fully Charged live show. So it's been a bit of fun, and it's actually been a really good promotional tool for the business. And having, you know, now lived with and owned a Taycan for a while, obviously we know the Porsche very well, and that enables us to sell used Porsche Taycans here from our showroom with confidence. We know a lot about them. So to any buyer like this car here that we're selling, which is in fact now sold, I believe, we have the knowledge base behind it, exactly what they like to live with. And just to get your head around the massive spec list that Porsches have as well, there's a myriad of configurations you can have with these cars. So this is a 4S. It's not the Turbo, it's not the Turbo S, it is just a medium spec kind of 4S, but it does have quite a few unique spec options, which I'll just run through very quickly. It's got the rear wheel steering, it's got the air suspension, it's got the 21-inch wheels with the what they call the, not the ceramic brakes, but the biggest brakes they do, the Porsche coated brakes, which you can't get rust on. So it's got then a spec of the red interior chrono package and a few nice optional extras. So it adds up to over £20,000 in optional extras, and this car new was well over £120,000 as a result. So it's got a pretty good, interesting spec to it, but it's just been a joy to drive. But before we get on to what I like about it, I'm going to cover those whingy bits and be just truthful and transparent. It's got to be done about what isn't so good about this car. So let's get into that first. So despite the high list price and a number of optional extras, I actually don't have a keyless entry. I have to use the key to lock and unlock the car. However, with the last and the latest software update that we've had, you can now actually add keyless comfort entry. So that can be added actually to this car now, apparently. And talking of software updates, this has been back to the dealer twice just to have software updates. Even our oldest Tesla Model S over there, 2014, has been doing just over-the-air updates ever since that car was new and runs the latest software. However, there's been a couple of major software updates with Porsche, and for each of those major ones, it's gone back to the Porsche dealer, for each one for a couple of days at a time, actually. The last one, I even had to take the original owner's manual in, where they had to destroy it and prove it was destroyed for then a new software update to be implemented, and then they gave me a new paper owner's manual. So that seems a little bit primitive, and it's a shame it doesn't just have over-the-air updates. It does now, apparently, so it will do over-the-air updates now. Well, maybe there'll be another big software update that it has to go back into Porsche for sometime in the future, but just continuous software updates from the start would have been better, I think you'll agree. And so whilst we're on the topic of software, this is one of the things that I think lets the Taycan down, in that the interface in the screen here isn't the best compared to a lot of modern cars these days. It's okay, it does the job, and despite these big software updates, it hasn't really changed a great deal. I did do a video recently about the very latest version, which gives a bit more colour on the screen. But the interaction and the software on here can be a bit slow, a bit laggy, and it's just a bit primitive compared to many a modern software system. And that's probably one of the things I think lets it down a bit. It's not especially intuitive. And let me show you something. So for example, as soon as I get in the car and I was listening to the radio the last time I was in the car, that's what I want it to go back to, but it always defaults back to Apple Carplay, for example. So I have to go back to radio, and then it goes to the default radio list, so then I have to go to favorites and go back to the radio stations that I would last listening to. It should just default back to that. That's just one little thing, but broadly speaking, to use, it's not amazing, and the navigation graphics look a little bit out of date now, but it is saved by the fact it has CarPlay, so it does have wireless Apple CarPlay, which is good. However, if I want to use the mapping of Waze or Apple Maps or Google Maps from my phone, it comes up on here, looks very nice, all works fine, but then the mapping on the screen here doesn't work, and it doesn't do things like preheating when you're heading to a charger. So if you're doing a long journey and you're going to stop at chargers, the car can do a preheating for that, but you have to make sure that's in the native navigation system rather than just being able to, you know, have that in the background, use CarPlay. Something like the BMW i4, for example, if you're using mapping on here, will also show up on the screen here, and in the BMW i4 case, I don't have it here, the head-up display as well. So Apple CarPlay integration generally works okay, a few little glitches, but generally okay, but it doesn't kind of mix in as well as some other cars as well. And let me show you another little quirk. If you've got a Taycan, you may not even realise it does this. If you push this little button underneath sync here, it brings up a little shortcut menu for some of the key features on the main screen, so I can quickly switch to Apple CarPlay, or I can switch to navigation. That's all good. However, when you're driving, that little option disappears, so now if I didn't have this row, I can't bring that row up and down. It's now fixed. If I go back to park, I can choose whether that shortcut row is there or not there. You can see there, it's kind of, go to drive, and that disappears. I can't bring up that shortcut menu. That's a little bit annoying. Just things like that I just don't really get. Now I've got a phone holder in here, but this one actually doesn't have wireless phone charging. And I generally find there just isn't enough storage space in here. I've got two cup holders, but often that's phone and my sunglasses. So if I've got a bottle as well, that comes out and that gets replaced. And then I've got to put this in here, which is kind of then awkward to get to. Obviously you don't want to get to your phone while you're driving. Now some models do have some extra storage under here, but my one just slides off like that. Now, one of the things you can do in the Porsche is configure your different drive modes. I've got the chrono pack, so I can change between range mode, normal, sport, sport plus on here, which is great. However, for things like the suspension height, it doesn't always remember the height you want. So I want my normal mode to have a medium chassis level. When I go to the first level of sport, I want it just to drop down one, and it's still a medium. So I say, right, I want this to be lowered, which I can do manually. But then it doesn't always remember that. I'll get out of the car, get back in, and then I go to sport and it won't do the lowering. It doesn't always remember that. There is an individual setting which then remembers it, but I'd kind of like just to have its normal modes kind of configured how I would prefer each mode to be rather than kind of some kind of default. So that's a little bit annoying as well. Generally in here, the fit and finish is lovely. You don't have the hard plastics, you've got kind of leather or leatherette trimmed dashboard and console, so it all feels very nice and premium. I love the steering wheel, it's great. However, there are a few little bits. I've had door trim rattles before, which been in to be fixed and still doesn't quite fix it. Rattles a little bit on certain surfaces. And quite a common thing is the seat can squeak. Mine's okay now because it was done under warranty, but it's been quite a common thing where you need to get Porsche to actually replace the seat base. And even then I noticed earlier it actually squeaked. Well, it's fine again now, but you can sometimes get little bits like that, which just let it down a little bit. Bear in mind, this is a fairly early UK Taycan, and I do have 30,000 miles on it, so it has covered a few miles, probably one of the higher mileage Taycans in the UK. A common Porsche thing for years has been getting grit and leaves and stones and stuff down in here, down by radiators, and this has radiators like other Porsches as well. Now what I did notice was once I was charging and the fans were running, you could hear kind of grit and stuff in the fans. So again, the winter Porsche, they had that sort of stuff cleaned out and cleared out. But that's been a common thing with Porsches for years. I remember 911s, you often put like meshes across the front here to stop a lot of debris going in. But it still seems to be a problem, so I'd like to see that Porsche do something a bit more to resolve that. So I've got these huge brakes. I think these are some of the biggest calipers on any car. I think the Bentley Bentayga shares these calipers and a Lamborghini Urus. Now, with electric cars, when you sort of hit the brake pedal, most of it is regenerative braking. It's actually the motor's braking and not the friction brakes. But what I have found with this car is when you come to that final stop and it actually then resorts from the motors to the friction brakes, these can feel a little bit dead. Fine on the track, you can do some hard laps with these and they're good, and this has been on track. I've driven it very hard and the brakes work there and you don't seem to get overheating messages or anything. It's a big heavy car on track, but it does a pretty good job. But yeah, sometimes on the road you just kind of get that little bit of a dead feel, that last bit of braking, and don't have that initial kind of brake bite that you want if you're driving a little bit firm and you're using the friction brakes, not until they've heated up. Now I've got these medium level headlights, and not the basic ones, not the top spec ones, but the medium ones, which do have the cornering function. And they're generally very good, by the way, but what I did notice was that they had a very flat beam most of the time rather than angled up for, you know, driving on the left hand side. So I did report that to Porsche when it went in for some of the other work, and they did rectify that with some kind of software recalibration or programming so that it knew we were primarily driving on the left hand side. So if you've got a Porsche Taycan and the headlight beam looks dead flat and you don't have the angles off to the side, or it's not doing the cornering function, you need to report that to Porsche, because they should do that if you've got these headlights. Folding wing mirrors don't come as standard, they were an optional extra. And I don't have adaptive cruise as standard either. I don't have it at all because it wasn't ticked on the options list despite many options being ticked. And you do think, really, come on Porsche, for the money, many things like folding wing mirrors and adaptive cruise should be standard things. Now, I get that people want to customise and configure their Porsche and they have more options so they're more unique on the road, but there's a few things which, for the money these things cost, they start at over £80,000, but that gives you something really basic, doesn't it? Folding wing mirrors, a lot of things like that should just be standard. You buy just a Tesla Model 3 standard range and you get a lot more standard specification than you do with the Porsche. It's embarrassing. It's not a big thing, but before this last recent big software update, which started rolling out in August 2022, so again, this one has that, you used to be able to see like a power flow on the driver's cluster on the left-hand side if you wanted it, so which motor was driving, whether it's four-wheel drive, two-wheel drive at the time, but that's gone now. Now you've got it in the main screen here, Porsche boasts about, but to do that you have to go to the car, and then not even on this screen where you configure your stuff, you have to go to trip there, and then when you're driving you can see whether it's recuperating or just one motor's driving the car, for example. So it has to be in this screen, which means you can't have other information up at the same time. Not it's a big thing, but when you used to be able to see it in a little display here, if you like seeing that stuff, it just seems silly that it's been removed. So let me show you now, one of the changes with the last update was the Sport Chrono, and being able to do more like automatic lap timing, I think. So in here I can go to start, hang on, let's go to evaluate, that'll give you some lap times here, but if I go to, so there's a little graphic for the lap, and I go to start reference against a stored lap. So now I can set a stored lap position and then start the recording of the lap time, and it will record the lap, but the graphic is a very simple kind of grey line like this. Now, on a Tesla Model 3 Performance, you see an actual satellite map of the track. You pick the start-finish line, and then automatically logs your laps down on here. So this is sort of doing it, but in a much more kind of basic level, I think, and it'd be nice to see a little bit more going on with that. However, it is moving in the right direction with these updates. I'll also mention that the app isn't anywhere near as good as something like again Tesla, unfortunately. So it takes a little bit longer to connect than most, but it seems to be more quicker recently, seems to be a bit better. But I find things like setting up your charging profiles, for example, you have to set up these profiles. And all this stuff here, so for example here, are set to, they call it a minimum charge, but it's basically a maximum charge of 85%. So I had this last night and confirmed it, sent it to the car. However, this morning I got in the car and it would just charge fully. And you can see now it's still at 93%. So some things like your scheduled charging and charging timers just aren't as simple as other cars and not as simple as it should be, and therefore not that reliable. It looks like the car's doing a wee, but don't worry, it's just because I've left it on and the air conditioning is running. So you'll see that in a few shots, but don't worry, it's not weeing. Okay, so it sounds terrible, doesn't it? There's a few things to moan about. There's been a few warranty issues. So why is it a good car? Well, it just is. It comes down fundamentally, I'll explain a few different things, but it comes down fundamentally really to how this car drives. And every time I get in it, I absolutely love it. It is just a dream. And that always makes me smile. It has a sense of occasion, but it's just the way it drives. And what I like about it really, if I try and explain this as quickly as I can, is that it's got a couple of different sides to it. One is you're just in normal mode, range or comfort, and you're up and down the motorway. I spend some days covering many hundreds of miles, and it is a great car for that. It's super smooth. So I've got the air suspension, but even on the cars, it's very comfortable. But this suspension has fantastic travel to it. It's really absorbent. It rides not quite like a Mercedes S-Class, but it really isn't that far off. It is super comfortable, super absorbent, and is a fantastic mile muncher. In the UK, we're restricted to 70 miles an hour speed limits. I'd love to, you know, in Germany especially, where you can just open this up, you can feel it would be in its element at higher speeds. But it's just a fantastic, comfortable car for long days in it, and very, very refined cruiser. I love it. It's brilliant for that, and I step out of it in days smiling and still without backache, very comfortable. But then if you go to Sport or Sport Plus, you can have a bit of fun. I mean, I've taken this on track a few times and driven it hard, and it loves it. It's good. Okay, it's a big heavy car, some shorter, tighter tracks. You know, you can feel that, but especially when I went to Thruxton, we did another video on that. That's a very high speed circuit where you're running 145 miles an hour and go around some very fast corners, and it's flat, it's level. And I don't have the Porsche dynamic chassis control, but this has just got a Porsche, you know, I've got that suspension sorted and refined. You can feel the heritage. It is a fantastic track car. So you can, this balance of two different modes, Jekyll and Hyde, comfortable, refined, long distance daily cruiser, and then you can actually push it hard around a track, really enjoy the car, and it's just fantastic. Then you drive it home again, just normal, and it does all that on electric, so it's nice and green, nice and quiet when you want it to be, and that overrides so many of the negatives. I can't speak high enough of just how fantastic this is to drive. It's a big, wide car, but it's very maneuverable. So I find in car parks, it has got a really good steering lock on it, so you can maneuver around very easily. Mine happens to have the rear wheel steering option as well, but either way, it's got a really good turning circle, so that makes it very easy to maneuver, and again, really nice and easy to live with. So to have a middle seat in the back here is an optional extra. You have to specify the 5-seater, and the middle seat is obviously a bit compromised. It's quite small, and there is a kind of transmission tunnel type thing here. But it's fine for a child for shorter journeys, no problem. But actually, in here, the space is good. So for 4 adults, this is a seat in my position. I'm 6 foot tall. I've got knee room. I've got my feet underneath the seat there. I've got headroom. The seat has got a nice reclined angle. It's very comfortable. What they actually did with the battery, you see, rather than having knees up like this, there's actually cutouts in the batteries for your feet to go down. So unlike some EVs, I'm actually seated in a normal position. So the back seats are surprisingly comfortable. And my daughter, it's going to sound like a princess here, I know, but she says the Taycan is one of the most comfortable cars to be in the back in. So she often requests that I take this one home for the weekends. What a princess. And this one's got the pano roof, which actually as a driver at the front, you don't get to appreciate so much. But when you're in the back, it does let light in. And again, it's nice to have that big glass roof. And with this roof, you can also fit a proper roof rack as well if you wanted to. The boot is surprisingly good as well, so getting big suitcases in here. It's quite a long boot, so it goes all the way back there. And I've actually got 3-way folding seats in the back of this. There's a useful bit of storage space under here as well, so you can put some extra bags and jumpers and stuff like that. So it's a very usable boot. The only thing I would say is that this bit on here, the angle is a bit like this. You can't pack things quite here. You have to come down like this, but we've been away as a family on a week's trip, no problem at all for luggage space. And you do have a big deep storage space at the front here as well for putting cables or an extra bag and stuff like that as well. It's kind of handy to have a charge port on each side, but only one side is CCS rapid, and that is this side. So what I have found is that you pull up to some fast chargers and you've got to pull the cable across here and plug it in, and that could rub on the bodywork here. Luckily this has got a wrap, so it doesn't matter what I do to the bodywork here, and that's why it's also good for doing shows and stuff, because people can touch this with sun creamy fingers, it doesn't matter. But you will find that if you've got a car with normal nice paint paintwork that you've got to be very careful when you're pulling that cable across here, and you also have to be very careful of any curb edges or bump stops so that you don't catch your front bumper on those. So if you have the power flap, it looks nice, works well, very pretty, but you don't get that through vent here. So this car has a manual opening flap. Car's locked, but you can actually put your hand through and that goes through there. You don't get it with this. See how good the steering lock is? I can whip round here in one go from a very small gap and don't need to shuffle. Any other car you need to shuffle unless it's a Honda E or BMW i3. Okay, now I'm not a big fan of the reversing camera on this. It's a bit of a distorted image, but what I do like is you can set shortcut buttons in this car. One of them I've set over here on the dashboard to be the camera view, and I can go to this view here. And what I like here is as I'm coming up to a curb, it does very accurately show me the wheel and how close I am to the curb. So I can go very close to it, but without touching it. And that does work very well. However, when you go to reverse, I'll show you the view you get there. This reverse camera is a bit distorted. It's not the best reversing camera. However, it does have a little washer, so I can actually wash the camera when it gets dirty. And that is quite a good feature. Okay, let me show you another little shortcut I like. So again, there's a button on the steering wheel here, which you can create as whatever shortcut you like. For me, I've got the sound box. So if I can just cruise along in quiet, but I can hit this button and turn the sound box on. And then when I accelerate, it makes lots of nice whooshy noises. And then when I'm just cruising along, I can make it go all quiet again. So that's kind of good. So this is only a 4S, but it's quick. It is very quick. The turbo is even quicker, and the Turbo S is even quicker again. But on the road, the 4S is actually plenty and fine for me. It's got a bit of a character to it, this though. So if I put my foot down, you actually get a bit of a kind of delay sometimes. So you can put, it normally drives, I think, in the second gear. I think if you're in Sport Plus, it's lower down. But this is how I'm driving along now, and I'm going to come up to a 60 miles per hour speed limit in a second. And you're going to see, whoops, I'm doing 33 miles an hour. Let me show you here what happens when you put your foot down. So accelerate normally. If I kick down, there we go. See how it kind of delayed, then did a little kick down to first. Now, you'd think with an EV that's not brilliant, and technically it probably isn't. It kind of delays the getting going, but it does add a bit to the character of the car. If I go to now the sport mode, it goes vroom. Oh, sport, this goes vroom. There you go, Sport Plus. And now it's instantly violent. And I do love the fact that you've kind of got things you can play with in here. You can change your modes and your settings and stuff like that. There's a bit more to do, and it's sort of not perfect, but that's why I like it, you know. So it gives you a little bit more. You think, well, I'm going to have a sporty moment, go to sport, but then you go back to normal, goes all quiet, and it's very refined. All the dampers soften off, and I can go over bumps like this and barely feel them, you know. So it's kind of hard to explain how it's got character, I think is the word. One thing you have to get used to when you're driving this is you do tend to use the brake pedal. So compared to something like a Tesla, you don't just have the one pedal driving. You can turn, there's some sort of a coasting mode now, and I can use this button here to turn on the recuperation, but it's very light. It only does light recuperation. Now what it does do slightly differently is I can hold that button and it goes to automatic recuperation. I'm just looking at this little symbol down here. Now this by default now will just coast along, but if there is a vehicle in front of me that's slower, or I'm approaching a junction or roundabout, it will then increase the recuperation. So you sort of get an increase and decrease of it, and it sounds like it might not be that good, but I actually quite like that, and you get used to it. But you do basically have to use the brake pedal and drive it much more like a conventional auto compared to some cars. Sport Plus. Now it's ready to go. Ooh. A Tesla is just kind of like normal, put your foot and it goes, and then it's quiet, and it does everything kind of better, more efficiently in a way, but you do lose a bit of the character, you know. And I think as a petrol head, you know, you don't have the noise of V8 engines anymore, but you can still have something that has a bit of a character about it, and a kind of a sense of occasion. I think that means a lot. The Taycan has incredibly fast charging speeds. It can go from 5% to 55% in about 10, 11 minutes, 260 kilowatts. It's fantastic. However, you know, is that good for the battery? Some would argue not. Now what you can do, this is a feature that not many owners will know about. When you're in the charging screen here, you can push these little 3 buttons on the side here. And then you bring up this option here for battery saving fast charging. And you can tick that. Now, I've certainly put that one on this car because this then will actually limit the charging speed to 200 kilowatts. Now that's going to be slightly better for the battery, less intense heat. But actually, if you go from a very low state of charge to 90%, it's actually about the same amount of time. If you have this off, it does 260 kilowatts, it's all rapid at the lower end, it gets hot and then it slows itself down as it tops the battery up. So if you need a quick 50% top up, it's very good. However, what I did found very realistically is that with my wife and daughter and we stop at the services and go for some food, it was too quick. I was kind of rushing out to the car to move it before I'd even finished eating. Now this is nice actually because it just takes that slightly steadier charging speed, still fast, still 200 kilowatts throughout a very large percentage of its state of charge. And it just gives you that little bit more time to eat and finish your food. But actually if you're going to go to the state of charge, say 90%, it's pretty much just as quick because it can hold that steady speed for longer and not rather than having a peak and then decreasing down. You get to that 90% about the same amount of time. So if you've got a Taycan, you need a little bit longer for your lunch, I'd recommend turning this option on and it may well help your battery last longer. Okay, here's one for you. So we've got what looks like normal air vents. I'd love to be able to just move these around left and right like I would want them, but you actually can't do that. What you have to do really is go to something like the climate menu here, and then you can choose a diffused or focused airflow, or you can go to individual, and then you can move your vent around manually. But if you're thundering down the motorway or an autobahn, that's not really ideal to be fiddling with this, is it? Why not just have that little toggle on here to move your air vent? So the Taycan's quite a low car, but there is a nice easy shortcut just on the dashboard here to quickly hit the suspension into lift mode so that it will raise for that location, and then you can actually save that location. So the next time you get to that particular speed bump, for example, it will lift up as long as you're going below a certain speed. So that's useful, a nice quick shortcut button right in front of the driver there rather than having to come into the menu. So we've got this lower part of the screen here, means you can in theory kind of navigate around the screen using this rather than touching the screen. But I never use it. It's more fiddly than just touching the screen. Do that. And I'm going to do a Q. There we go. And I can do
Q.
Q,
U.
E, Queensway.
E.
Oh, that's the name of the road we're on. Well, it's gone there. There it is. Queensway. New Milton. So yeah, it kind of sort of works, but I never use that bit of the screen. I think it's fairly pointless. Okay, what else have we got? Oh yeah, I'll tell you one little useful thing that might not be useful to many people, but it's useful to me. So I'm going to bring up an option in the menu here, and you have to go to the car, then you have to go to comfort. But in here, I can adjust the passenger seat. Now I find this useful actually because my daughter gets in the car and we want to lift it up high like this, and then she can sit better in it, or I might want to recline this back onto Gints there, and just to annoy him really for no other reason other than just to be annoying. And then I can end that. And you can set memory profiles for the passenger seat as well. So this one has got passenger seat memory as well as driver seat. And so she can actually save her own position. It's just a useful little thing, and passenger seat memory is a useful thing for me, because Gints, this is actually your position for the front seat, Gints, isn't it? Really kind of laid back, you know, this is my lunchbox here. But then when my daughter gets in it, she can just push number 1, it goes back to her position. Now that is something that you do not get in a Tesla. There you go. Do you want me to move that back for you? Oh, I know, the button stopped working properly again. Hey. Did you know that the little Porsche crest and these headrests, that's optional extra?
Yeah, 350 quid, isn't it?
Probably, cup holder's probably extra. Shame there's no sunglasses option. Do you know,
They put seatbelts on standard option.
considering I don't use this bottom bit here, the best place for my phone actually is there. And I can answer messages whilst I'm driving. I'm joking, I would not use my phone whilst I'm driving. I'll leave it in the phone holder over there. Okay, so let's wrap things up. I should have brought up a G meter on here and shown you just how many G's are pulled in acceleration, because it can do that. Never used it, but I can do that. I would say actually, like when you're using, like I like the clarity of this screen here is actually very good, and I do like being able to change the layouts in here, and I do like being able to have this, for example, on full map. Never go to there, then go to there, and go extended map, and then you've got this as a full display on the map in there. That comes up quite nicely. The graphics in here, you know, and the quality of that display is nice. So I'll give it that, and the steering wheel is lovely. Obviously having this chrono package gives you this drive mode selector here, and that's nice to have there. And the fact you can do a shortcut button there is handy. So the steering wheel is lovely, feels good quality. I've got normal cruise, by the way. I might not have adaptive, but I've got normal, and I do have lane keeping assist. But again, I just tend to drive this car because it's a driver's car. I just wish we had higher speed limits in the UK. And now it started raining. But there we have it, the Porsche Taycan, a fabulous car that I absolutely love. And like I say, a privilege to be able to own and run this car for such a long time. Will I ever sell it? Well, I've put a number on its head actually, so it is currently on our website for sale. We've got some solar being installed on the roof of our warehouse soon, so it wouldn't do any harm to raise a few funds for that. But if I can keep it, well, I'm not too bothered. I'll try and make it happen if I can. So a fantastic car, a few little niggles, a few little flaws. Not quite the perfect EV in many senses, it's not efficient as some, but it is a fantastic car to spend long days in. It charges super fast and it's very comfortable, but then you can go and take it around a track as well. It is a remarkable thing. So the Porsche Taycan definitely gets a thumbs up for me. The proof's in the pudding, one of the only cars I've kept for over a year. That's it for me for now. Thank you for watching. I hope that's been interesting and useful, and we'll see you in another video very soon. So stay subscribed and make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of all our new videos. And don't forget to check us out on social media too. And if you really want to buy this Taycan, you really want to prize it out of my hands, check out our website, rsev.co.uk.